episode 418 of Retro Encounter, RPG Fans Weekly Podcast of many topics. I'm Mike Sollosi, and I'm going to try and keep it as light as I reasonably can in this episode, because some of the subject matter that we'll be discussing might get a little dark. But who's here to join me in this dark journey to light? They are Audra Bullen.
Hello.
Jimmy Turner.
Howdy.
And Hilary Andreff.
Hi, I'm really excited to be back on Retro.
Yeah, and well, Hilary, I wish we had, maybe something happier to discuss, because I think I'm a little worried about the different turns this conversation could take. All three of you are very smart, respectful people, and I'm not, and that's not me casting aspersions that someone will say something wrong. Today's game is Omori, which is a game that deals very directly with some very heavy topics, and it's not an accident that we're doing this episode in May. May is Mental Health Awareness Month, and so we decided to have our RPG of the month be a game that confronts mental health issues directly, and I would say pretty successfully. I want to get this out of the way early. I'm not that far into Omori right now. I've been playing a frankly irresponsible amount of Eoden Chronicle and the recent Prince of Persia game, and I got a little bit behind on my podcasting. So I'm only the first, let's say, 4 or 5 hours into Omori, and I know this is a long-ish game, so I've barely scratched the surface. But before I talk about myself anymore, let's start with you, Hilary. What's your relationship to the game Omori? And I don't want to put you on the spot in a bad way. But what are your sort of thoughts and expectations going in?
So, I definitely knew what I was getting into in terms of the heavy topics. I'm definitely okay with that. In my day job, it is mental health related, so happy to tackle the heavy subjects. I'm going to encourage everyone, whether you're listening or part of the panel, take care of yourselves. If something gets too heavy, let us know. I think it's so incredibly important to talk about these issues and these topics. So that's really why I'm here. I want the discussion to be open.
Excellent. And that is as good an attitude as I think you can have for a discussion like this. Jimmy, same question to you. What's your past playing Omori, if any, and what were your expectations going in?
What I knew about it, my kids are actually, my two oldest teenage daughters are actually really into this game. And I had a really serious discussion with both of them before they played it for the first time. It's been over a year now. So agreed to let them play it. And basically they're both really big fans of it, and they've, told me multiple times that they think that it's something I should experience. So I thought, hey, what better time to come on and do this podcast and play the game for the first time. I'm actually playing with my daughter, who's not spoiled anything for me, so she's been pretty good about that.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah. But it is kind of nice too, because if I get stuck on a puzzle or something like that, she knows what to do. So that's kind of nice too. And then we can also, it gives me an opportunity to kind of talk about some of these issues that come up if need be. So that's where I'm at.
That's so great that they, want it, that you all are included in talking about it together. That's really cool. And also that they're teenagers. So that's an interesting perspective to have on this game too.
Okay, as a man in my 30s, I sometimes have a very annoying instinct to backseat game or preview things like, oh, you're here, aren't you? Oh man, like if one of my friends is playing a game that I know and love, I can't imagine how I would have behaved if my dad was playing a game that I knew and loved, and I was living in the house with him. So that's a fascinating dynamic, Jimmy, and yeah, if you're comfortable doing so, I'd love to hear about yours and your and your daughter's thoughts as we this podcast and next week's podcast move forward. But Audra, it's your turn. What's your past history with Omori, if any, and what were your expectations going into this game?
I didn't have a lot of past history with the game. I actually just saw and read some very good discussions on it and interesting conversations, and I decided I wanted to try it for the podcast.
Right on. And Audra, I'm in a similar boat to you. I have never played this game, but I was aware of it. It made a medium-sized splash when it had a wider release in 2020. This was a 2014 Kickstarter project, and it had multiple delays. Then a limited release in on itch.io in 2018, and then a more full release on Steam and other platforms in 2020 with a console version coming later. And around that 2020 window, RPG Fan did have a review of it, which I read. A little bit surprised at the places that this game was alleged to go based on that review. And so I had it in the back of my mind, and it's a game that never goes on sale, frustratingly. But when it was brought forth as a possible episode topic for Retro Encounter, I was very, very interested in playing it for the first time. So my expectations going in were that this is a game that confronts certain mental health topics head on, including but not limited to depression, anxiety, self harm, suicide, yeah, hikikomori, which is a Japanese word for basically a shut in that cuts themselves off from society. And the game itself stemmed from the creator writing a web comic called Omori Boy, and then deciding to adapt that into a video game stylized after a 16-bit RPG. So that is what Omori is. It's a game about depression and about confronting trauma, um, but it plays like a 16-bit RPG that all four of us know and love, or I should say, a format that all four of us know and love. Where to begin here? I mean, like, we can just begin where the game begins. You're in a bleak, empty room with nothingness, and you're not sure what to do. Or I should say, the player is not sure what to do. If you read, we know that the character's name is Omori, and when you read your journal or go on to your laptop, it's a little disturbing because the art in the journal is a little bit is a little dark, and it's all blacks and reds, and the journal entries are just a never ending repeating refrain of nothing happened today, it was all right, or words to that effect. So like from the very beginning you can tell this is a person who is going through a difficult time, but we don't really know what's going on. uh but also it's in very, very stark blacks and whites, and even shortly after the opening segments, when you enter a much more colorful world, the other characters are in these pastel shades of purples, and it's a quite beautiful 16-bit styled setting, but the character Omori himself is only black and white, flickering slightly as if it's like a stop motion animation in crayon, and wielding a what seems to be a kitchen knife, which is, just like an expressionless boy with a knife, black and white in a sea of color. There's some stark visual choices made by this game, and that's even before we go into the harsher depictions of let's say dark feelings. Um, so yeah, again, if this is the first time for all four of us playing, what were your first impressions in just the opening scenes?
There's a lot to be said. I think it's called white space, right? That very just kind of blank area that where you start out, I think.
Yes.
Yes,
Yeah.
I believe that the entire world that is inside Omori's head is called headspace, but that blank area is white space.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, just seeing that right away, it was extremely interesting the way it lets you interact and be involved and kind of see this process of, well, self protection, right? Involved with trauma. I mean, the overwhelming impression you get right away being there, the journal entries, all of them the same, but the contrast with the sketchbook and just kind of the starkness of all of it. You just get this overwhelming impression of, okay, this character is protecting themselves from something. What is it? And it's also very uneasy. That got my anxiety up a little bit because I was like, oh no, this is probably going to get bad.
Yeah, and this is jumping ahead a little bit, but like I mean the character Omori and later the real world version of this character, like there's just depictions of things like grasping hands pulling you back into your headspace, and and like feelings of like suffocating going up staircases with things like darkening or getting or the game feeling more sluggish. They really do like portray sort of the tension of anxiety and the suffocation of depression. Like I feel, I mean, I can say it now, I guess. The human real name of this main character is Sunny, and Omori is the name that Sunny gives his sort of internal self. The like you feel the head fog that Sunny is feeling in the opening moments of Omori, the game, not the
Absolutely.
character.
Yeah.
And you get the feeling that it might be protective.
I mean, it's very clear that this is some kind of defense mechanism. Um, and the first scene that you get with the real Sunny and not Omori himself, you do a little bit of questing around as Omori, and Sunny is appears older than Omori. I think, like, if I had to give them ages, I think Omori's maybe about 12 and Sunny is a teenager.
Yeah.
Uh, but the first thing you get with Sunny is him stumbling around a dark house trying to make himself some food, but it just makes him sick. He throws up in the toilet. He stumbles back to his bed. You get the more imagery of the hands pulling him down and like being unable to see or breathe, and then just going back to bed, and then you're back in white space again. So it's clear from the beginning that white space is Sunny's retreat from the real world, but we don't really know what's happened to him or what's going on with him. We just know that this is that Omori, the character and the world, is a dream state of Sunny that is, at least my interpretation, either a trauma response or a depression response or the combinations of multiple of those things. But I am not a mental health professional. I do attend therapy regularly, but I do not want to be someone's 5 cent psychiatrist like Lucy and Peanuts or something. But Audra and or Jimmy, what were your reactions to these this opening hour or so? Like, it's almost like Dorothy going from Kansas to Oz, then back to Kansas, except everyone's much sadder.
I found it really just powerfully done and not upsetting, but like it was very. It can be disconcerting at times, just, but at the same time, I found it really interesting, just the exploration and like how it framed everything.
Yeah, you do kind of get this nice frame of like a first kind of short foray into the dream world where you meet up with your most important friends, and you, I think one of them, you have to go. I'm actually trying to remember the order. Sorry, I started a while ago. But one of them, does he disappear? No,
Yeah,
okay. There's hide and seek, but then the bully has. So your friend's name is Basil, and you get kind of roped into a hide and seek game in this dream world, and then you have to find him, deal with a bully, and then take him home, and that's kind of like the first like short foray into this dream world.
mm-hmm.
Yeah, the child version Omori, you see him interacting with his four friends, Aubrey, Kel, Hiro, and Basil, and also a fifth person Mari, who is sort of the older sister character who looks after the younger our younger main characters. And Mari also always is on a picnic blanket with a picnic basket and some food, which represents your inn and your save point. The picnic basket's the save point, and whatever food she has is your full heal. And we're going to talk about Mari later. But basically, in this early dream world, you're playing with these four other kids. You get this dynamic together. Basil's very sensitive. He loves plants and flowers. Aubrey's a bit of a tomboy. She's not really bossy or pushy, but she's just kind of tough. Kel is a bit of a bit of a troublemaker. He pushes Basil and Aubrey's buttons very often. Hero is more of a mediator. He tries to get everyone going along, and he's and maybe the most outwardly friendly of the four. And then there's Omori himself, who is almost like a silent passenger to this otherwise very very lively crew. Um, Omori is a silent protagonist and has this almost disturbingly neutral expression to everything going on around him. Jimmy, did you when you encountered these early characters? What were your feelings on them? Maybe leaving Mari to the side, but like, did these seem like real kids that maybe your children could have interacted with, or is it, or was there something else there?
Yeah, I think it. I even had some memory. I was one of those kids that wandered the neighborhood. I was an outside kid, Um, so I even got some familiarity from my own, you know, when I was that age, out of the kids. So my overall impression. So I think maybe the way that my kids described the game to me before I knew anything about it, I thought it was more of like just a more straightforward horror game, which I've played a, a lot of. But I found out really quickly that this is not a what I thought it was. Like it doesn't ever give you necessarily like strong feelings of dread, like say a Resident Evil or a Silent Hill or something like that gives you. But it does a fantastic job of just kind of creating this like uncomfortable feeling, just with the mixture of the visuals and the audio. Does a great job. Um, so yeah, those are kind of my first early impressions of the characters and just the overall feeling of the game.
Yeah, I don't know if I felt like the impending dread of a future jump scare, but I definitely felt that something was wrong here, something was off, and the character of Omori himself, the you know this sort of very blank character surrounded by color, but also alone in his own white space, sets an unusual tone. It's like, and then the scene with Sunny in his house or apartment, um, it's like, okay, this is the sort of the dream world or the inner world of someone who's depressed and struggling, and we need to, and at least this is my interpretation, and the portions in headspace where you control Amori are Sunny confronting either traumas or fears or anxieties. And like very very early in the game, and I'm sorry, this episode is probably going to be a lot about the beginning of the game because that's how far I got. Like there's just what is it? There's a big ladder in one corner of headspace, but you can't go up it because you're afraid of heights. And there's a what was the other one? I think there was like a spider web or something, but you can't go across it because you're afraid of spiders. But when after encouragement from Mari and your friends, you get over a fear of heights and you can travel to the next part of the game. And it's like it's gated not by finding magic keys or learning a spell like maybe in another RPG, but by getting over fears, you're able to go to new areas. Like they are really really gamifying um mental concepts. And going into this game, like I knew it was a game about depression, and there's even a content warning at the beginning of the game for some of the topics it addresses, but I don't know if I was expecting quite this. And I think the first time you go into Sunny's world, you leave headspace by picking up a knife and using it on yourself, implying self harm, which was maybe to me at least the most shocking moment of the first few hours.
Mine too.
Yes, I think so too.
Yeah, for sure.
But Jimmy, you're telling me that that the the teenagers of the 2020s have discovered this game and embraced it?
It's strange, in a lot of ways. I think, as I'm in my late 30s now. um, and I think every generation does this, that, they think the next generation is kind of more, they just don't understand as well as your generation, or they're too young, and, um, they just don't get certain things. But, you know, my kids and, a lot of their friends and just kids that age in general, like, they surprise me a lot just with, I think they're actually better at, like, being honest and, kind of embracing feelings, talking about mental health problems, where, I came from, you didn't really talk about that kind of thing. Ever, if you were feeling depression, it might be, oh, you're just feeling down today, you'll feel better tomorrow, that kind of thing. We just didn't have the same kind of understanding about mental health in general, and I think that's something that has really improved, um, with this generation. I'm much more open with my kids because, my parents, they were good parents. I had a great upbringing, don't get me wrong, but they we just didn't talk about things like that. It was just, you just did not have those conversations. um, and I think it's really helpful just to be open with your kids. So that's my point of view on it.
And well, I mean, I don't have nearly as intimate a viewpoint as you do for this, Jimmy. I mean, you're the father of teenagers and younger kids, but I mostly know this from either my friends' kids or maybe my friends' students, because I'm friends with several high school and college teachers. But I feel like, and I'm gonna, this is gonna be the most old man comment I've ever made in the history of Retro Encounter, but I feel like the younger generation has been forced to grow up a little quickly. Like they're confronted with more, I would say, more difficult, more mentally challenging things than I ever had to as a young adult. I mean, America has been consistently at war since the early 2000s. The school shootings are a regular part of the news cycle, and now there's school shooting trainings in the same way that I would have be annoyed by fire drills or earthquake drills 20 plus years ago. But so when I look at the games that connect with Gen Z, a game like Five Nights at Freddy's is incomprehensible to me. Like, I'm just the opposite of interested in that. But there's just a lot of sort of like open darkness and a lot of darkness and sort of confrontational attitudes in the media that resonates with people of that generation. And again, I'm speaking in generalities, and I must sound like I'm 75 years old right now, but I just think that there's a darker, more sardonic tone to to younger people's media now than when I was their age. So a game like Omori that very openly confronts mental health issues and personifies things like anxiety, depression, and trauma, when it's well executed and sensitively written, which I would say Omori is, it can resonate. So I'm a little surprised that that this to hear that this game is popular with younger people, but then I'm sort of not surprised after I think about it.
And of course, my mind is immediately going to the fact that this game released in 2020, at a time when many
Oh
people,
yeah,
many people in this age group were stuck at home in their own heads.
Oh yeah.
So yeah, that kind of lends it another layer of meaning to it, I think.
yeah. Teenagers in the 2020s have lived in a world of school shootings and pandemic response, and
Isolation.
that's brutal.
Yep. And already very heavy.
Yeah.
Yes.
Again, this episode is already just a hard one to talk about, and not because it's unpleasant necessarily, just because it's like, this is just heavy stuff, and you have to just walk a little carefully when you're carrying a heavy burden like this. And speaking of burdens, I was looking up what the meaning of the word omori is, and it does mean it has multiple meanings, but one of them is sort of load or burden. So I'm wondering, maybe I'm thinking about this too early, but maybe one way to interpret the title of this game and the name of the character Omori is that Sunny is trying to overcome his mental health burden that that's been haunting him for some number of years. But to balance this out a little bit, I think Omori is a very funny, occasionally hilarious game too. Like I mean, they do a good job of balancing the dark with the light to make the the jokes funnier and the more heavy parts hit harder. And again, this is very early in the game, but like you meet a space pirate named Space Boyfriend who's sad that his pop star girlfriend dumped him. But then when you learn that he was dumped and not just pining for her, you like his name changes in the UI to Space Ex Boyfriend.
Yeah, Aubrey calls him that, and then it changes in the UI.
Yeah, and so they're using the language of video games to assist the joke along, and it's again, there's a lot of moments in this game I thought were quite funny, like the antics of the kids in the hide and seek game were pretty amusing. The fact that that Pluto, the planet, dislodges himself from the sky and declares himself a rogue planet, or I don't know what I am anymore if I'm not a planet, and which is unclear commentary on Pluto no longer being classified as a planet in the solar system. But just the the very dry tone of these jokes and some of the absurd dialogue and situations. This is for a game about depression. This is a pretty hilarious game. I was pretty surprised and impressed with it.
I think as someone who grew up during the appropriate time period for this, I think one of my favorite things like that so far was definitely the junkyard, like how the junkyard was full of like dial-up modems and cassette tapes, and the boss was just the eternal download window.
Yeah, a 99% loading screen is the boss of the junkyard, and you're in the junkyard to find a discarded mixtape.
And I think it, like, you're chasing someone to get the discarded mixtape back for Space Boyfriend, and I think does the like faltering download window, it seems like it actually stops the person you're chasing, like they can't move.
Yes, they get like frozen.
Yeah, they get frozen. And then you have to fight the download window. And I think my absolute favorite thing, even with all of that, is that you beat the download window and it gives you 404 experience.
Oh, I didn't notice the 404 joke. That's excellent.
Yeah, that went right above my head.
I have done zero research about this, but I'm 100% certain that the writers and designers of this game were born sometime between 1985 and 1995. You cannot tell me otherwise. This is exactly elder millennial humor that speaks to me at a deep level.
It's wild to see that combined with like kind of some of the younger sensibilities that we're talking about, though. I love that all of those things are there in the same game.
I mean, and feel free to talk about a later portion of the game than what I've experienced. But was there a moment of silliness or humor that really jumped out at you? I mean, Jimmy or Audra? Because again, I'm not far enough to have seen more of the game right now.
I think one like consistently humorous thing is just the name of the enemies. They'll be named after just like real world things, but it'll be like literal interpretations. So like I remember last night we fought a lab rat, and it was literally like a rat in a lab coat holding a beaker with glasses on. Like, so it's just like little silly things like that. And those are constant. So that's the one thing that really stands out to me.
In the junkyard, there's an enemy called a shark plane. That's if you think that's an airplane with shark-like features, you're exactly right.
Yeah, I love the shark plane.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm going to take a moment here to plug a feature that we have about Omori, because what we're saying about like the literal kind of like enemy thing fits in really nicely with some of the things in the feature. The feature kind of talks about the emotion system, which I'm sure we'll get into a little bit later. And
oh yes,
Omori as kind of coding throughout the game as being, possibly neurodivergent. And if this is his headspace, I kind of, those enemy designs kind of, I think, go along with that coding a little bit, possibly. I love that.
I really like, especially was very curious about the neurodivergent coding in the game, and I really like how it does seem to present itself in it.
Yeah, I think that they're portraying these characters as like I mean they're in absurd situations, of course, and saying ridiculous things, but at least their attitudes do feel like they could be real people. Like I would not be I don't want to like to diagnose fictional characters necessarily, but Basil has has major social anxiety, and Kel I think probably has a version of attention deficit disorder, and Omori is going through multiple things right now, but I think that neurodivergent coding, while also trying to overcome a depressive and traumatic event is at least vague and fair. But it's all done sensitively, and I mean, even though Omori's going through all of these things, it's gamified that he feels happiness, anger, and sadness, which is the emotion system that Hilary was alluding to not long ago. The I'm gonna say this is like a combination of status effects and also like battle mechanics. Um, yeah, those three statuses that I mentioned. Happiness, I think, increases your evasion, but also lowers your hit rate. Anger increases your attack power, but lowers your defense. And sadness lowers your attack power, but also whenever you attack, you deal damage to the enemy's MP in addition to their MP, HP, which are called heart and juice in this game.
Doesn't that also increase your defense? I'm trying to remember.
I think it either well, I'm not, maybe it does. I think it lowers your attack for sure,
Mhm.
but the more important thing is that sadness is strong against happiness, happiness is strong against anger, and anger is strong against sadness, and you will resist attacks from enemies in that state of emotion, in that emotional state, and you will almost always score critical hits when you're attacking them of the appropriate emotional state. So these, like, happiness, anger and sadness are this game's status effects and stat boosts and your Fire Emblem style weapon triangle or elemental weakness chart. And every and all of your characters in these in these first person perspective battles that definitely look like Earthbound or Dragon
Mhm.
Quest, you can affect enemies and yourselves with these different emotional states, and it's I think the puzzle of combat is managing your emotional states in an advantageous way, and it's super fun. Like I'm like, oh, if I make my entire team sad when this guy is when this character is happy, I'll he'll do less damage to me and I'll get critical hits, but he's trying to make my team angry so he'll have the advantage, so I have to keep my it's like just basically angles like that are really helpful and useful, and
Yeah,
it was fun. I was having fun learning the nuances of the system.
I was too, and I also love that each member of your team has their own strengths and their own personality and their own skills. So you kind of have to quickly get the hang of, okay, who's going to be able to make others angry, who's going to be able to
Yeah,
cheer.
Aubrey can cheer people up. Kel can annoy you to make one of your characters angry. Omori can read sad poetry to make everyone sad. One of Omori's knife attacks is much stronger when he's sad. Little things here and there that give these playable characters, that gives them individuality and interesting mechanics. I was, again, I'm interested in going back to this game because I was having fun, like, learning its language, as it were.
Yeah, and they team up. They also have follow-ups, so you kind of get to see the team like playing off each other and what happens when that goes wrong. I think my most frequent one was like me trying to get Kel to pass the basketball to Omori and Omori not paying attention and missing it, and I think it made him sad.
Yeah, I think it makes him sad, and then Kel and Aubrey, I think like Aubrey gets annoyed with Kel,
Yep.
depending on what you do a follow up with. Yeah.
So that's another way to kind of like those interactions also are a way to manage your emotional states, which is really cool.
Mm-hmm.
And it reflects their personalities as well, because like Kel is sort of hyperactive and annoying, so he has the annoying move, and he's also your fastest team member. Aubrey is sort of your fighter, your frontline bruiser, because she's a tough tomboy girl. While Hero, the sort of mediator and calming presence, is your team's healer, but he has the fewest offensive options. Like they're communicating personality through gameplay in a way that I always love to see when I'm in an RPG.
Yeah, and for Hero, one of the things I think is absolutely kind of fascinating, your healer is the one that brings your emotional states back to neutral.
That's right. Yeah, he has the massage move that can bring you back to a neutral state, which is helpful if the enemies are trying to make you sad or mad to deal extra damage.
Yep.
Yeah, I really like it. Just adds that extra bit of flavor to turn-based combat, which is always nice.
And I don't know, maybe this is me having recently, or like 2 or 3 weeks ago, rewatched the Pixar movie Inside Out. I think it's interesting that they didn't make anger or sadness negative. Like it's a clear balance that anger, sadness, and happiness are meant to interact with each other. And sometimes, like sometimes you want to be sad or want to be angry, but you just need to like manage your emotions and at the right time, because I mean, spoiler from a movie that's like 15 years old now, but Inside Out is about sort of like learning to process situations through sadness in a way, basically the joy character has to accept the sadness character to achieve their goals. But in this game, it's like anger and sadness aren't negative, and they aren't penalizing. They're just a state that anyone can be in, and sometimes it's the right state to be in, and that's refreshing.
Hmm.
Right, and I also like the triangle to me. The more I thought about it, actually kind of makes sense. So like happy is strong against anger, and at least for me, if I'm angry, if somebody just kind of like makes a joke and kind of lightens the mood, that helps me. But if somebody was sad, it's not going to do any good. Or if you're already sad, then me coming at you with with raging anger isn't going to help you. It's going to make you worse. So it actually, I think it kind of makes sense.
And a happy person doesn't want a sad person to bring the mood down.
Exactly right. Yep.
It's just, I mean, it both fits the message of the game and is interesting from an RPG mechanical standpoint, and it's a fusion of narrative and gameplay, which is always something I love in an RPG. It's super smart. I've barely scratched the surface of it. I can't wait to learn like what ridiculous sad sorcery Omori learns in hour 15, if I'm only in hour 5 right now.
And it's interesting to see, I mean, you as you go through, I think, and meet these characters in the real world potentially versus in Omori's headspace, it's really interesting to see how that changes what they're able to do and their skills and things like that.
Okay, so I know that Omori, or I should say Sunny, does meet the teenage versions of these characters in the real world eventually.
Yeah.
Like I'm not quite there yet in the game, but so does what happened in the real world affect the headspace world? Like even just like what I'm just pulling names out of my butt here. Like what skills Kel learns depends on how you treat Kel in the real world. Or am I go is that a little bit is the truth less elaborate than that?
As far as I am into it, I think it's it's a little bit less elaborate. What I was thinking was so far what I've seen is just kind of different sets of skills actually. And of course what they learn in headspace isn't going to transfer over, but like I think Omori can't. So the emotion states stack, right? When you're in headspace.
Yeah, that's
Um,
right. I think anger becomes like enrage becomes furious or something, like they can stack. That's true.
but that actually happens l- less to Omori in the real world. I think he can only become like that first level sad, angry, or happy.
Right, and he has a special skill that allows him to calm
Calm
down
down.
and
Yeah, so
yeah.
he learns like slightly different skills. So like the result of that night where he microwaves the steak and gets sick, um, there's like something in the dark that attacks him, and it's like he has a totally different emotional state that you don't see in other places, which I think is afraid. And the only thing you can do is calm down, and so that's like where he learns the calm down skill. So it's like slightly different skill set. I think I'm trying to remember what Kells are, but I'm blanking at the moment. But they're different too.
You're not talking about him learning flex from Pluto or
Yeah, sadly that didn't carry over into the real world.
oh darn. I cannot tell you how much I enjoyed the commentary, the meta commentary on Pluto's planet status, while also giving him muscular arms and legs, and making him your fast travel dream world guy, all within the same 5 minutes. It was a wild ride meeting that guy.
Yeah, you meet him and he determines his new purpose and teaches Kel how to flex like in a couple minutes.
I really have been enjoying this game so far, and the only reason I haven't played more of it is because I've had an exceptionally busy week. And when I've been playing video games, I'm mostly helping my girlfriend write Aoden Chronicle guides for her job. So it's I've had a bit of a rough go of it. But what I've played is super intriguing. But just to take the temperature of the room a little bit, around where is everywhere is around where in the game is everyone? Give me an estimated hour count.
I think I'm around 8-ish.
I'm around 15 actually.
Okay.
Nice.
I'm also around 15, but I also tend to grind a little more than I need to. And so,
Yeah, for me it's different. I tend to play games very quickly compared to my teammates at RPG Fan. But so Audra or Jimmy, is there a part of the game that we haven't talked about yet that you maybe can't wait to talk about next week, or are very interested to talk about next week?
Probably more the Sunny in the real world is really interesting.
yeah,
And how it kind of differs and just how it ties into everything.
I want to hear like how everyone's like what everyone has kind of like chosen to do in the real world. Because one of the things I've heard is that there are some different decisions you can make that really change what happens. Because I guess one quick thing to mention, kind of the whole frame for this is that Sunny is moving away from all these like friends and all these people in 3 days. So kind of the frame of the game is like the 3 days before he moves.
Yeah, I remember, and this happened earlier enough that I did get to experience it. One of the notes from your mom in the brief real world segment that I played was like, we need a fresh start. We need to get away from it all. We're moving in a couple of days, and I was basically looking at context clues. I am more certain than ever that that Mari passed away when Sunny was the age of Omori, because I mean Mari is she's a sort of nurturing figure to all of the kids, but she never leaves that picnic blanket. She's not present for any of their adventures, but she's always sort of like a source of comfort. And if you look at the pictures on the walls or surfaces in Sunny's house, they're like it's a picture of someone who's not here anymore or something. Like I don't know exactly what happened, but I'm certain that Mari passed away, and that is related to Sunny's current mental state.
Yeah, and there's that thing I think at the end of the first night, like the whole steak fiasco, doesn't it end with like some kind of vision of Mari like forgetting her keys and you can choose to open the door or not?
You can choose to open the door and it's something. Yeah.
Did we open the door? Did everybody open the door?
oh yeah,
I did.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, I know that. I mean, if this is a game about Sonny processing grief and trauma, then I know that, and then interacting with the child version of his four friends and then their adult versions, and Mari's death hanging over all of it. uh I can tell that there is drama brewing, and I don't really know what will happen, but I'm excited to find out more. And Jimmy, you and I were on a podcast together a few months ago where we were drafting our favorite aspects of different RPGs. And our another panelist on that episode was our mutual friend Alex Franachek, and he said that the final boss of Omori was one of his favorite final bosses in recent video games, but in certain circumstances you don't even encounter it. Was, I believe, what he said on that episode. So I don't know where this game goes, but if the final confrontation has as much drama and as much choice as Alex hinted in that episode from 3 months ago or longer, then that's exciting to me.
Yeah, I'm suspecting that we're gonna probably start deviating a little bit in like what we're seeing in our decisions, and it'll be interesting to see how that all plays out.
Mm-hmm.
I'm tempted to play this very anarchically, or maybe even in a mean way. But this is the kind of the game where a kind of game where I don't want to do that on my first playthrough. It's like, no, I'm gonna try and be a good boy and and approach every situation with as much compassion as possible. I'm not this is not a game to make your first playthrough Renegade Shepherd.
Fair. I think I don't know what's going on with my choices, but I'm definitely being a very bad hikikomori, and definitely going outside, getting jobs at the pizza place, doing work, talking to everyone I can. And there's so many side quests. That's a side note, but it
Yes.
Yeah, I was surprised at the number that I just encountered with the kids on the playground
Yep.
and the people on the moon camp. They this game really rewards you checking every nook and cranny more than usual for RPGs of this level of ambition, I would say.
Yeah, and there's actually kind of a nice but vague like organization slash hint system with Mari.
Yeah, if you ask her for help, she will give you a hint for one of your outstanding quests, including where you're supposed to go next for the main quest.
It's also just a very cute touch that depending on where you are, the food that Mari's offering keeps
Oh,
changing.
yeah,
I think my
changes.
favorite
That's
so
right.
far is the space tube food.
Yeah, it's candy or fruit in the forest picnic, and then it's space tubes, and a
And
ro- and
chicken.
a roasted chicken in the junkyard, which makes me wonder, is that like playing Final Fight and finding chicken in the trash, or like wall chicken in a Castlevania game or something. Maybe I'm overthinking that, but
I'm just
uh,
imagining all these like kind of gaming and like pop culture or anime references kind of coming into Sunny's subconscious. And I think we're sort of intended to view it that way to some extent, because like even when you start out in headspace, there's like a random tentacle that's completely unexplained. I think like some anime memorabilia. I don't remember exactly what else is there, but like you find kind of random hints at that all around.
yeah, this game is a more richly textured narrative than my assumption going in was, and that's exciting to me. Like I went into this game knowing it was about depression and trauma, but not knowing anything about this really interesting emotion battle system or all of the humor and weirdness that the game has, and or its myriad side quests. Like all of this was a very pleasant surprise to me, even though I've only been playing it for a couple of days when I can squeeze in an hour here or there. But I am near the end of Aiden Chronicles, so I think I will be able to devote more time to Omori and hopefully beat it in time for next week. But you know what? This is going to be a bit of a shorter episode, but I think we'll have more to talk about when all of us have beaten the game and can emotionally process for ourselves the events of the game. Because I'm worried about maybe I shouldn't play this game too too late at night or something, because I'm certain, I don't know what's going to happen, but I'm certain that it is going to be powerful and dark, and I need to be in the right headspace for that while I'm navigating Sunny's headspace. But again, this is not the last Omori episode we're doing. Next week, we're going to do a part 2, continuing our discussion on Omori and getting more into the end game and the specific plot of the main game, and not just about the portrayals and the vibes and the mechanics, which are still good, but the tone of the discussion will be a little bit different next week. Also, speaking of a change in tone, we're gonna have 2 episodes on Grandia 2 coming in June. I don't think I'll be on those episodes, but Grandia 2 is an excellent RPG that won a Retro Encounter vote held around episode 400, and I'm really excited to hear those episodes, because Grandia 2 is an old Dreamcast favorite of mine. But also filling out the month of June, we're doing an episode on the aforementioned Eoden Chronicle 100 Heroes, a spoiler cast on that late April game that was many years in coming, following a Kickstarter campaign. That's 2 Kickstarter games in a row, because that's also how Omori first began life. And also an episode that is almost the opposite of our RPG Obsessions episode from last week. I don't want to say exactly what it is yet, but there's going to be a game about there will be episodes about Eoden, episodes about Grandia, and episodes about disappointment coming in June. But if you want to ask us about about Grandia or Omori or Eoden or disappointments, you can email retro@rpgfan.com. Follow RPG Fan on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Threads, Twitch, YouTube, always called either RPG Fan or RPG Fancom, or join our Discord channel, also called RPG Fan. Another great way to support RPG Fan is to visit the shop. rpgfan.com/shop has 2 storefronts, one hosted by TeePublic, where you can find RPG Fan apparel, coffee mugs, phone cases, and other things, and another one hosted by Hyperplay RPG, which is a UK-based publisher that recently released a book of 300 single-page RPG Fan reviews, with definitely Audra and probably the rest of us also represented among those reviews. RPG Fan also has 2 other shows in the RPG Fan podcast network: Random Encounter every 2 weeks about randomness and what games we're playing, and Rhythm Encounter every other 2 weeks about RPG music. Hilary, you're one of the regular hosts of Rhythm Encounter.
Yeah.
Do you know what's going on this week or next week that we can give as a treat to the listeners?
So I know there is an episode coming up about pirates, which is always an exciting topic.
You don't say.
Arr, yeah.
Arr.
Be they space pirates?
They could be. I think we're accepting space and regular pirates. Let me see what the other one is.
Sky pirates?
Or
Yep.
Very specific to a game I'm playing right now, Sand Pirates.
Yes. I think any form of pirates.
All right. Let's say mid 2000s emulation website piracy.
I mean, I would listen to music from a game about that.
I should have gone on that episode and brought a bunch of Terranigma music or something, because I had to pirate this thing to play it. That was a missed opportunity of a joke. But listeners, do not miss an opportunity to listen to RPG Fans' many fine podcasts, and also give us reviews on Apple Podcasts or YouTube or Spotify, or however you give podcast feedback. We love any feedback you're willing to provide. But if you want to reach out to us as individuals, not as a podcast, let's tell you how to do that. Starting with you, Hilary.
Best way to contact me is my RPG Fan email. And that's Hilary@rpgfan.com. You can tell me about disappointments. Good things are also welcome. And if it's a disappointment in me, please keep it constructive.
Hilary, I can say with certainty, and I speak for all 3 of the other of us, you are never a disappointment.
Oh, thank you.
Yes.
But Audra, how can listeners find you?
You can contact me at our email at audrab@rpgfan.com.
Now, Jimmy, same question.
You can email me at turnerbasedxp@gmail, or you can find me on the RPG Fan Discord at turnerbasedjim.
Excellent. And listeners, if you want to find me, I am not that hard to find on the internet. You can go onto Discord or Blue Sky or Instagram. All 3 places I am called at Evoker for Dogs. So, oh man, I think I need to mentally steel myself to play more Omori, just because I'm not worried about the places that it'll go. It's more that I know the places it goes, and I'm worried about my reaction to them. And next week we'll also have to talk about how this game is so obviously inspired by Earthbound.
Yeah, 100%. And yes, everybody take care of yourselves.
All right, but I cannot think of a better message than that, Hilary, to end the episode with. So I'm going to forgo my usual sign off, and listeners, please ask you to take care of yourselves.